We're going to be like, well, she just told us that Kyla is her favorite.
Yes, I did. I think it's over there under her backpack. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was going to get it out for you, but I guess I can't.
Can I grab it?
So, yes, you can.
Was there a fly?
It's in.
Probably.
Also, I love the binding.
Isn't it so
cool.
good?
She was freaking out.
How did they do that?
It was actually, I don't know, my publisher did it, but I learned that they just don't have, because most books have the exterior binding that goes on the outside, so it just doesn't have that. But they had to do crazy printing so that they printed it after.
Right.
Because at first I wasn't sure if it was open and then each little thing was printed, but he said it was printed after.
Cool.
That's so cool. Yeah. It's beautiful.
Oh, have we gone live yet?
We are live.
Oh, okay. Well, it doesn't matter. You guys can ask me any questions as we're painting.
Awesome.
Oh, why did you turn it off?
Stop it. Stop the live. I have to tell them all the secrets before we turn on the cameras.
Do you guys want water?
Actually,
Thank
yeah,
you.
bottle. Do you mind? Thank you, Nicole. Oh, and we use a plant. This to trace our circles. Let me get that. Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you so much.
Got first timers.
Welcome, welcome, first timers.
Hello.
Oh, before or after Sarah? I just wanted to say, remind people that the sale was just for today.
Oh, okay. Do you want to do that at the beginning?
Whatever you think.
Let's do it at the beginning.
Let me get the box.
Okay, I might grab the water.
You can go this way if you want, Becca. Oh, okay.
Congratulations on the baby boy.
Oh, thank you.
Bring the jealous rage. Greetings from Mexico.
Oh, hello.
We're going to go ahead and adjust this camera here to see the top of your head.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Turn down my volume. How is our,
Streaming.
yeah, we're good today?
It's delightful.
It's wonderful. Last week we were having issues.
Last week
There we
had
go.
all the issues.
Nice and clear. Crisp. Okay. Okay. Set as a reference. We'll put this as a reference over here. My notes. Lots of things.
Denise says, my four sisters and I are spending Saturday afternoon painting the seahorse. It's my first trip home in over 2 years, and I can't think of a better way to spend time with my girls.
Oh, that's so great.
That is so great.
I love that. That really was something that I didn't totally expect when we started Let's Make Art, is how great it is to do it with other people. Like, it didn't even, but a lot of families do it together and friends, and it makes me so happy. I'm like, you guys are so great.
Watching the little baby grow up. Got some friends from Canada.
I was trying to think of what Canadians say. I couldn't think of anything. That's what I was going to say was A, but then I'm like, wait, is that right?
My favorite Canada joke is, how do they decide on how to spell Canada?
How?
C-A-N-A-D-A.
Who's from Canada?
That's so
Listen,
great.
I don't mean this to be rude. I just like to joke and tease people. And
I am so
I love everyone the
sorry.
same amount.
I'm
so
sorry.
I tease everyone the same amount too, so don't be offended.
It's true. It's true. Have we had work conversations about teasing? Maybe.
It's better than having work conversations being told not to hug people. That's happened
true,
to me
because
too.
Keenan has also had that. Please stop hugging customers.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, when he worked at Walmart.
Yeah.
I thought you meant
I was the friendliest cashier you could ever have. I got a lot of man hugs. until I got asked to stop.
Like, would you initiate the hug?
Depended on the day.
Can you tell me the scenario?
So
in
the
which you would
scenario
hug
was
customers?
I hugged a lady because she was having a bad day. I was like, "You need a hug?" And she was like, "Well, yeah, I'd love a hug." So I gave her a hug. That was my first warning. You shouldn't hug the customers. So then I was like, well, that's upsetting. So I told this nice, rough-looking gentleman, and I said, I'm not allowed to hug you. I'm really sorry. And he said, well, what if I initiate the hug? And I was like, you trying to get a man hug? And he said, yeah. I was like, perfect. Let's do this. His wife was so distracted at our hug that she left her cell phone on my belt. That's the only way the managers found out I hugged this guy. So then they came back. She's like, I'm sorry, I got distracted because my husband hugged your cashier. And they came over and were like, Keenan, stop hugging the guests.
You're like, I'm giving the customer what they want.
They always came back.
The customer
so you're welcome,
is always
Walmart.
right.
Yeah, exactly. The
Do you want them to leave
initiates it.
satisfied? What do you
And
want?
happy? Yeah. Didn't Walmart's rollback thing always used to be a smile?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
The smile went away when I
Wait,
quit.
is it not a smile? No.
I
Just
think
a
they,
spark.
yeah, I think they rebranded it to.
Yeah, now
like
it's a
the-
spark.
Could they?
I don't know,
Are they
but that
suggesting
smiley
that
face.
Walmart is happiness?
Yes.
Terrible.
Well, you'll have that. Ooh, it's 7:17.
Oh my gosh.
Keep
Okay.
on hugging. Oh, I do now.
And all caps.
Okay, we're ready to go. Okay, welcome everybody to Let's Make Art. Thank you so much for joining us, being a part of our live. We're really excited you're here. We have some really fun guests. So we have Becca here to my right. We have Kyla here to my left. This is a late birthday present. I'm so excited that they can be here. They drove all the way from Arkansas, so they're so awesome. Also, Kyla makes stamp jewelry, and she made me this beautiful necklace that says "Let's Make Art." I love it so much. So thank you.
Maybe we can show everyone.
Can you see that? Can you see that?
Nice. That's great.
Okay, and Keenan is doing our camera work. That's who you'll hear talking
Yes,
in the background.
I'm in the background.
Nicole Mayuki, who is our wonderful lettering artist. She's waving. You can't
She
see
is
her, but
waving.
she's waving.
Very friendly wave.
She's also here hanging out. Do you want to make your announcement right now before we get started?
Sure.
Okay.
Really quickly. Okay, what we wanted to say was really quickly. Today is the last day that our summer lettering quarterly box is gonna.
Just
Can I
crouch
come on
in.
Can I come on in?
Yeah,
The last
sure.
day our summer lettering box is available. This is one of the projects. You get all the supplies to do it for 3 months. It's okay that summer's coming to an end because you can still do this. You don't have to-
Evergreen projects.
Evergreen at any time. So that's the announcement. Last day. few
Last
more
day to
hours.
get it. 20% off for a single purchase. And then we release fall. Tomorrow. So
coming.
so exciting. If you haven't gotten the summer lettering box, it's available last time for today only. And then we will retire it and move on to the fall box. So just go to letsmakeart.com and you will see that there. Okay. Thank you, Nicole. You're so wonderful. Okay. We are doing our hydrangea project tonight. So please ooh and ah at the beauty of what we will be. Thank you. Aw, she gets it. And we are using 4 colors tonight. So we have fuchsia, we have azure blue, we have emerald green, and we have violet. If you're using Dr. P.H. Martin equivalents, you're looking for, I think it's like wild rose. That sounds about right. Wild rose, violet, moss green, and turquoise. So essentially you just need pink, purple, blue, and green. Honestly, you could probably do without the purple because you can mix purple with the pink and the blue, but
Sometimes
Why
you
not?
don't want to mix.
sometimes you just want to have the option of just having it already there. I'm trying to be better about not making people mix so many colors because sometimes it's hard.
What is the phrase? Catch 22. Like you want to give it to them, but you don't want
Yeah.
to work too hard.
Yeah. We want to make it easy. I still
Yeah.
want you to learn something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. So we are doing this project in 4 steps. So the very first step is we are going to kind of roughly sketch out where our bloom balls and our leaves are going to be, which is why we have pencils handy. Second step, we are going to paint the petals on our first bloom ball. excuse me, third step, we will do the petals on the second one, and then we will paint our stem and our leaves. That's it, 4 steps.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy. We are going to start with we got to start with our oath, and then we'll do our warm-ups before I forget.
I mean, it changes every week.
No, you know what?
We did warm-ups last week, and then we did the oath.
Okay, no. This is what it is. When there is an outline, I have us do the outline first, and then the oath, and then the warm-ups.
I would like to agree with you, but we didn't. We had an outline last week.
Right, so we did the outline, and then the oath.
Then the warm-ups, then the oath.
I will bet you money, sir.
No, I don't want to bet.
You don't want to bet?
No, let's just do the oath.
Okay, so if everyone can raise their right hand and repeat after me, I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise not to compare my work.
I promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
And I promise to have fun.
Thank you. And I love doing that because, gosh, I'm a competitive person by nature, and by darn it, when I sat down to take a lesson, I was for sure ready to compare myself to the person next to me, and the teacher reminded me that that wasn't okay. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. This is my first lesson. I should be nice to myself and not think that I have to be the best, because it's not about that. It's about having fun, and it's about learning. That's all it's about. A couple people said they love the apron. Thank you. It's floral sloth fabric. My mother made it for me and sent it to me for my birthday. So thanks, Mom.
She's so great.
She is great. Okay, so for our warm-ups, we're using 2 brushes tonight, our round 6 and our round 2. They're Princeton Heritage Series 4050s. They're round watercolor brushes, wonderful brushes. If you're new to watercolor, you're going to want to get some rounds, and I highly suggest this brand. They're great quality. And the first thing that we are going to practice is different values. So value is not necessarily about the color or the hue, it's about the lightness or darkness of that color. So I'm going to get my paintbrush wet, and then I'm going to hit my bristles off the side of the cup so then it's not too, we don't want your paintbrush dripping. And then I'm going to grab some paint, doesn't matter what color, and I'm going to load my brush with this paint. So I'm dipping the belly of the brush into the pile. And that's how I'm picking up a lot of paint. And then I'm going to just do a shape. Doesn't matter, you can just do swatches, you can do heart, whatever you want. But this is our dark value. And so usually that just means that there's more paint on our paintbrush than water. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just dip my paintbrush a couple of times, hit it off the side of my cup, and then paint another swatch. And as you can see, it's a lighter value. So the color hasn't necessarily changed, it's the same hue, but we have a lighter value of it. And this is the beauty in watercolor and why I love it so much, because you don't have to keep picking up paint, you just keep picking up water, and you're gonna get different lightnesses. So just keep doing that same movement of dipping your paintbrush a few times, hitting it off the side of your cup, and then painting a swatch. And I just want you to see how far you can go before you're almost out of color. And it will probably be different for all of us, and that's okay. And especially if you're new to watercolor, but you're familiar with acrylic or oil painting, this color that I just laid down, like this barely there blue, you might think is too light. But I'm letting you know now that when you're painting with watercolor, you still want to use these as well. So you want to make sure you have your lights, your mediums, and your darks. And it's when you have that full range of values, very nice. It's when you have those full range of values that you create form. That's the difference between a circle and a sphere, is just the value and the shading on it. That's how we make things seem three-dimensional. So it's really important. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually practice it the opposite way. So we're going to practice, because I've noticed that especially people who are beginners have a really hard time getting the light value right from the beginning. So instead of having to get a dark value and rinse your brush until it's light, I want to show you how you can start with a light value and then make it darker. So clean your brush. And so, and this is why I like the butcher trays, because what I like to do if I'm trying to get a light value is I'll spread the color out, okay? And then with my damp brush, I will just use the tip of my brush and grab a little bit of color. So I'm not loading the belly like I did trying to get a dark value. I'm just grabbing a little bit from the edge and then painting with that. And there's my light value. You probably can't even see that on the overhead.
Barely.
You can a little bit.
Yep.
I feel like our white balance is a little bit off on that overhead.
It's a little dark.
Yeah. And then, so there's my light, and then the next one I'm just going to grab a little bit more paint. And then paint with that. It's a little bit darker. And then I go in and I'm going to pick up a little bit more. And paint with that. And so just keep on grabbing a little bit more paint each time you go back in. And if you just practice that, that will be super helpful for you while you're painting your paintings to understand how much paint you should grab in order to get different values. Very nice. Now when you are starting to get a rough texture like this, you see how that's nice and rough? It just means that you need a little bit more water on your brush. So you just wet your brush and then you can get a smoother line. So if you see yourself running into that problem, you just need to wet your brush a little bit more. Very nice. Beautiful. Beautiful values. Yes. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Oh, I'm going to flip this over actually. I'm going to flip this over and we're going to practice our petals and then I think we can get right into it. So I posted a video earlier today, a close-up of how I do the flowers because I noticed that some flowers were a little bit more like this. And usually hydrangea petals are actually really wide. So if you're doing an individual petal, I kind of like to do like a half circle that goes up into a little bit of a point and then another half circle like that and then fill it in. So it does come to a point, it does narrow in at the top a little bit, but they have a really, really wide belly. And they overlap with each other. And also I literally looked at pictures of hydrangea petals forever, and they're all kind of a little bit funky too, so don't feel like they have to be, you know, all the same shape, because they really aren't. There were some petals that were like seriously like this big, and some that were like this big. So it really changes, gets wonky. So just go with it. Don't be mad at yourself if some things are getting a little bit funky. But I just want you to make sure that you keep your petals a little bit wider. Yeah, I would widen those up just a little bit. Yep, very nice. Yes, yep. Now, if you want to introduce the wet on wet technique, if you do a little bit of a petal, and while it's still wet, if you want to grab some color and drop it right in at like where the center is, that color will just bleed out and it's so good.
That is just still my absolute favorite.
Mine too. It's so satisfying.
It is. Goodness gracious.
So practice that too as you're doing your petals, because as if you look at our reference photos here, you can see that I have some dark centers going on, and that's because when it was wet, I just went in and dropped in a little extra bit of color, and it just bled out and did its own funky thing, and it was really great. Very nice. And then try and do some close to each other and let the petals overlap. Because that's another thing our brain is going to tell us to avoid, is your brain really likes patterns, and your brain likes to make patterns whether you are trying to or not. And you might try and line up your flowers perfectly to where they're all at the same angle and, you know, evenly spaced apart, but that's not how flowers actually bloom in nature. And so don't be afraid to let one petal run in front of another and let them overlap, because that's actually what we see, and that will also give us the feeling of it being nice and full, which is what hydrangeas are. They're like these full flower balls filled with petals that are so crazy you can't even tell what's going on sometimes. Someone just asked the petals that I'm showing now if that's the size to make. You can make them that big. I made them probably, yeah, I did it probably about half that size actually. So the one that I just painted is probably ½ inch, and the petals that I was doing in the warm-up were about 1 inch. So the whole flower itself with all 4 petals should be around 1 inch. Yeah, that feels about right. Very nice, beautiful. I love that hint of blue right in there too.
Thank you.
Gorgeous. Yeah, oh, look at that blue in there. Don't be afraid to do little hints of other colors, pops of the purple, pops of the blue. It's where you're gonna get some really fun colors and textures, things going on. Okay, so the next thing that we are going to practice is just a leaf shape. So when you do your leaves, you want to keep in mind that these leaves, they are serrated. I kind of left mine more smooth just because I think it's easier to do a smooth edge, and it's my painting, so I can choose to do that. But they do wide and then narrow out. So when you draw your leaves, practice doing them big and practice, you know, really making narrow at the beginning, widen it out in the middle, and then narrow again at the top.
Donna wants to know if we can use the number 2 so it makes it easier to do the petals.
Absolutely. You can use whatever brushes you feel comfortable. I'm using a 6 for these, but if you feel better doing your petals or whatever part with a different brush, please feel free to do that.
I think it's safe to say, as a warning for some, we're going to try and do a 2 to 3 minute challenge during the painting of this, just to save on some time.
So similar to how we did it in the pre-recorded, if you've already watched that, we kind of gave ourselves like a time limit to fill up the entire flower, because it's super easy to really, and there's nothing wrong with taking your time, but for the sake of you guys, and also
they still have to drive 4 hours to get home.
Yeah. So we might give ourselves a little bit of a time challenge similar to that, because it's really easy to take your time with this, because there's a lot of little petals. So just a warning, don't get mad at us if we when we do that time challenge, okay?
I have my stopwatch ready.
Good, good. And if you have extra paper, try and do it with us. It is super, super helpful for you guys to have time limits, because you have to work quickly and you have to make decisions quickly, and it just, it gets you out of your head, because sometimes you're so in your head and you're like really worried about making it perfect and you're going so slow, and then you're so afraid to do this petal here. Sometimes you just got to let that go and paint, and it's really, really helpful in terms of having to make decisions quickly. So we had to do that all the time in art school, very nice, and it was really helpful but really stressful, so I'm sorry, but it's necessary.
So I have a question.
Yes.
With the leaves in the example photo, they're really dark, and I really like that, but then the paint turns out really light.
Okay.
Whenever I use it.
Yes, that is a great question. So the emerald green, if you use it just by itself, is a really yellow green, almost like a lime green. Mm-hmm. So what I did to darken that up is I grabbed the emerald and I grab some fuchsia and more green and a little bit of blue. And now I have this really deep green.
It's so much more satisfying.
Yeah. So when we go to the leaves, I very rarely actually just use green straight out of the tube, especially emerald green, because it's such a vibrant green that it's not necessarily a color that you would see in nature. I need to like tone it down just a little bit. If you mix its complement fuchsia, that will automatically tone down the green and almost turn it brown. Add a little bit more green and add some blue, and now you have this rich dark green. So great question. And the last thing that we are going to practice is we are going to do just some thin lines for our stems. So I am going to switch to my round 2, and this is probably something that we practice in every single warm-up, but it's hard, so we need to keep reminding ourselves, and it's really helpful because I love thin lines, so I use them a lot. So when I'm doing thin lines, I'm switching to my 2, I'm picking up paint, and then what I like to do is I actually like to squish my paintbrush on my palette, because then that almost pinches the bristles together to a point. So I kind of smush and then flip it and smush. And now my paintbrush is flattened at the tip. And then I'm going to do a vertical hold, so I'm holding my paintbrush almost straight up and down. And then really light pressure, you're just going to glide across your paper. Now, if it's easier for you to go straight up and down, do it that way. If it's easier for you to go horizontal, either to the left or to the right, do it that way. It's whatever is natural to you. I feel much better being able to go horizontally than straight up and down and going from left to right. That is like my natural instinct. So try it a few different ways and see what feels best for you, or maybe where you get the best results. And that means if you gotta like turn your paper a little bit while you're painting these different thin lines, absolutely nothing wrong with that. You can do that. So just kind of practice doing those thin lines.
The pool of the blue looks like a hedgehog.
It does.
Sherry said that.
Sherry, good call.
We're a big fan of hedgehogs.
We are.
That was one of my first tutorials that I helped film with.
One of the first and probably one of my favorite lines ever.
Facts of all time.
Keenan, give me a fact about hedgehogs.
Well,
they mainly stay on the ground. And I was just like, this is right. I'm so glad that you're here. Okay. The other tip I just want to give you about thin lines, since this is a little bit longer, you can see this main stem goes pretty long. If you plant your wrist and try and do a thin line and put all your weight on your wrist, you are limited in how far your thin line can go, and it's going to want to curve because you're just using that wrist joint. So when you do your thin lines and you want them to be long, you want to not rest. You can like graze your wrist on your paper, but you don't want to put your weight on your wrist. You want to almost keep your wrist. It's like, have you guys played piano where you're supposed to keep the back of your, it's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of like that same idea. So instead of planting and putting your weight on your wrist and doing this, you're going to keep your the weight kind of more in your shoulder and your elbow, and you're going to move from your shoulder. And that way you can go as long as you need to go. So you can graze your paper with your wrist, that's fine, but I'm moving from my shoulder. And that way, I don't have to just like, if I plant my wrist and then try to do a thin line and then like keep on going and moving my wrist, it's really hard to keep a smooth line.
Also, much like the piano, this takes practice to be good with.
Absolutely. So this might be uncomfortable at first. That's okay. Also, if you're coming from a lettering background, it is opposite. I've learned with lettering from Nicole that you have to plant your hand, which I didn't know, and that was really helpful for me to know. So just different tools that we use as we paint.
I noticed with Tyler, your hand was more in the air. I think, have you found that some people are better with it in the air, or more people are?
Yeah, so, and like, if you feel good with your wrist totally up in the air and your hand is actually a little bit higher on the handle, and you want to do thin lines that way, that could feel really good to you. Or if it's better for you to get closer and actually graze your wrist on your paper, that's okay too. Try it both ways and see. It does take a lot of control to be able to like do it from far away without like shakiness. Again, this takes practice, so if you're a very beginner, please be kind to yourself and go easy. You'll get it. It just takes time and doing that same kind of muscle movement over again. Very nice. Yes, those are great thin lines. Let's move on. Let's paint our painting. Okay, so grab your pencil. The only thing to keep in mind is watercolor is transparent, so don't like press super hard with your pencil because you will see these pencil lines through the painting. If you have a watercolor pencil, that would actually be super helpful to sketch with because those lines disappear when you add water to them. If you have a hard time eyeballing the shape of these balls and getting the right thing, you can just find something to trace. That's what Aisha did, who did it with us. So if you want you guys to use that, you totally can. So I'm just going to start by creating a bigger circle on the left-hand side of my paper. And same idea. I'm using my shoulder to make this circle. I have learned from an art teacher that if you use your arm and big movements to make basic shapes, they're more likely to be accurate than if you plant your wrist and try and do it with just your wrist. So this ball is probably about 4 to 5 inches, and it's on the left hand side of my paper. And then my second ball is going to overlap my first one and be kind of a little bit higher and to the right. It's roughly the same size, maybe a little bit smaller. Leslie said on the flower petals, I didn't notice which end you filled it from, the top or the bottom or the sides. Leslie, it doesn't matter. If you want to do your petal shape and then fill it in from the top and work your way down, you can, or the side or the bottom. I'll probably do all of those as we're painting. Okay, now after you have your ball shapes, actually, I'm just going to see how far off I was. Ah, not too bad. Sorry, I just wanted to see. Okay. Now we're going to do our stems. Again, this is just rough drawing. This is just general, so don't stress. It doesn't have to be perfect. But I'm going to, kind of coming from the middle in between is going to be my stem coming up this way. I am giving it a little bit of an angle. Usually you don't want to do super strong horizontal lines with organic paintings, like organic shapes, unless you're doing like buildings, you know what I mean? Because it will create a really strong implied line. And we want to give that natural feel. When you see hydrangeas, they're not usually sticking straight up. And then we have the stem coming up off the left. Very nice, very nice. And then these actually have little stems coming, and at the end of each of these stems, they're a bundle of flowers, and they all mix together to make this huge ball. So add a couple more stems in there, and some leaves. So we practiced our leaf shape in our warm-ups. We're essentially doing the same thing just with a pencil right now. Remember to keep them narrow at the top, wide on the sides. And hydrangeas are very, very, very leafy. Like this example is probably not enough leaves with how many leaves there usually are surrounding hydrangeas. So if you want to go crazy with the leaves, you won't be wrong. No problem. Okay, I think we're good. Very nice. Yep.
Slow on the leaves.
No, that's just fine. Take your time. Very nice. Yes.
One more.
Yeah, I kind of had one popping out in between these two because I just felt like just with those really thin stems going to those flowers, I don't know, I just felt like it needed something more. again, this is your painting. You can take out leaves, you can add leaves, you can add more flower balls, you can change the colors, you can totally change the composition. Don't be afraid to make it your own if you feel comfortable doing that. And then what you can do if you're drawing with a pencil is I'll just take my eraser and kind of just lighten some of my lines. If you have a kneaded erasers work great too. Because sometimes these like pencil erasers will actually leave like crap on your paper sometimes.
Someone actually bought a kneaded eraser from us the other day.
Really?
Yes, and it was just a kneaded eraser. We thought initially it was an online order. And we were like, well, that shipping is going to be ridiculous. It was only, I think, only 98 cents.
Yeah, I think they're less than $1. Okay, we're ready. I'm going to switch watercolors with you because you kept yours really clean. Sorry.
Swiper, no swiping.
When you do your flowers, use this cup. When you do your leaves, use this cup.
Can you pass me the paint? Mine
Yes. Oh, ran together?
At a party.
No problem. Paint party. Paint party in the corner of the butcher tray. Okay, so I think we're ready to paint.
I love it when it does that. It makes the little ridges.
Yes.
Sorry, I just had to point that out.
The
It looks like an
textures you
oval or
get
something.
on your butcher tray are so great. They're so great.
In fact, there's an Instagram.
Like rock.
There's an Instagram to follow.
If you guys know Brock,
Palettes, paints,
Palettes of Watercolor.
palettes of watercolor.
Our good friend Brock started an Instagram called Palettes of Watercolor. I would like to say that I make all of the creative content for that
is
Instagram.
True. That is true.
With none of the credit.
Also,
but
he may not have posted in a while.
Yeah.
He gave up after about 4
He
days.
did get, well, this was his problem. He was posting 5 pictures in
Yes.
one day.
He has
And I
lots
was
of
like-
pictures, yeah.
I was like, Brock, spread it out, brother.
Take
Now
some
you got to
time.
post
Take your
like
time.
another, you got to go take more
I know, what
photos
is
for
this then?
tomorrow. He got burnt out on it. He doesn't understand the Instagram game just yet. He'll get there. He'll get there. Okay. So I'm going to use my round 6 for these petals. You are free to use your round 2. The first petal, I chose to go with a color palette that is more blue toned with hints of purple. And then the second blossom ball, I went with more purple pinks. That's just because I really wanted to differentiate them. I didn't want them to run into each other, even though they would probably actually be the same color. But this is why it's fun to be an artist. You can just make up the rules sometimes. And it's like, guess what? I made up this world. I can do whatever I want. It's the cool thing about it.
Yeah, it's my world. I want it my way.
I want it my way.
It's a J.G. Wentworth. It's my money and I want it now.
Okay, so I'm going to grab a little bit of the blue and a little bit of the purple and just kind of start mixing those together a little bit.
I got a fun fact
Yes.
about hydrangeas.
Love it.
Okay, check this out. If you have a higher pH around hydrangeas, a pink hydrangea will be purple.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like isn't
so
that
if
true
you have
for
a
most
pine
plants?
tree, I don't know anything about plants.
Like the acidity of the soil will affect the
Yeah, that sounds
color?
accurate.
Then is it still a pink hydrangea? If it's purple.
That's the real question.
So it's a purple hydrangea.
I don't know.
Or all hydrangeas are the same, but the soil's
Yeah, the
So
soil's
they're
different.
just-
We're
That
getting
would be a
way
mind
too
blow.
deep now.
That would be a mind blow. All hydrangeas are actually the same. It's just the soil.
Interesting.
I wish my husband was here because he is all about
We need to
plants.
call him.
We should.
Call a friend.
He almost majored in botany, which is the study of plants, but he did biology instead. Okay, so here we go. We practiced our leaves. I'm going to start in the middle. So I'm just going to start with my petal, keep it wide, go to a point, do the other side, and fill it in. Now, my friends, please remember to grab water while you are painting this. That is how you get different values, which just adds dimension to your painting. While it's still wet, I like to touch the bottom of the petal, kind of where it's coming out from the center, with a little bit of color, and that will just spread. People are telling me all about pH.
Hydrangeas.
Yeah, colors hydrangeas. I did leave a tiny white center in between my blooms. If you forget it on some of them, it's not a huge deal.
So worried about time. I made mine massive now.
I know, I actually just looked at mine and I'm like, that's kind of big.
Yeah, same.
Okay. And that is okay. If you do your first one, I feel like this is probably the largest. I wouldn't want my bloom to go any larger than this. So I'm gonna work a little bit smaller around it. And this one was probably an inch. I would go smaller than an inch. Yeah. So I'm gonna do another one. And remember to let them overlap. Now, one thing that I really like to do to help me with my values and my water, oh, that one was just as big. Hold on, let me focus. I'm gonna do a little bit smaller one. There we go. Is what I like to do to help me to remember to grab water is I will just pick up color once and then I try and see how far I can go without picking up color again. So I'm only dipping my paintbrush into the water to switch up the values. There we go, that's closer to the size I want. So try and do that with your own work. If you notice that all of your flowers are the same value and you want to switch up having some light areas and having some dark areas, pick up paint for your first petal and then see how many petals you can do with only grabbing water.
Fun fact about hydrangeas.
Yep.
Susan says, hydrangeas stay mainly on the ground. And Wanda says it's true. You can add eggshells or coffee grounds to strengthen the shades.
Ooh, I've heard that before, I feel like. I think in American Beauty, when they were talking about roses, just like, it's eggshells. I don't know.
I'm not familiar with what American Beauty is.
American Beauty is a movie that I find is excellent.
Is it about horses?
No, but it is rated R, so
it's inappropriate.
not for the whole family.
Wow.
Can you calm down a little bit? Paint parties.
That's strike
paint
one.
brushes.
Oh.
Her palette is just ready. No, I think those are good. So I'm working on making my petals a little bit smaller because mine got huge. So I'm just making them a little bit smaller. And I'm just overlapping them, trying to cover the bigger ones with the new smaller ones so it's not so obvious. If I left that big one and then just did smaller ones all around it without touching it, that big one will stick out like a sore thumb. It would actually be more distracting than if I just did them all big. So try and like mess them up a little bit so it's not as obvious.
I find that when I have a sore thumb, it also tends to stick out.
Don't you hate it when you're making such a good point and then you mess up a word?
Thrum!
If that is not my life all the time, I just can't.
That's okay. Imagine how I feel about all my true facts. Especially about the trucks.
About the what?
Trucks.
How awful we were with the truck anatomy.
Oh yeah, I don't even want to.
Oh, how ironic.
Let's not talk about
I
that.
know.
Sue Brown said American Beauty is a great movie. Thanks, Sue.
What?
I agree.
Tell me what American Beauty is about.
It's
Should I look it up?
and it's about a family, and there's this guy who's kind of going through like a midlife crisis of what life is all about.
Harley.
It goes more. We don't need to talk about. Okay. Also, I've learned that I'm not very good at giving like summaries of things. Because then it's like, what information do I leave out? What do I include? There's so much more.
Wanda has a joke.
I'm ready.
Why did lunchtime speed by?
Why?
It was fast food.
It's so great when your children start telling jokes because, well, first of all, they just start saying things that aren't, there's like no pun because they don't understand how jokes works. Like Luna's at that stage where she's like, knock, knock. I'm like, who's there? She's like, a cow. And I'm like, a cow who? She's like, a cow with no legs. And that's it. Like, that's the joke. All the time.
Luna is
so funny. And then Ella's at that stage where she understands jokes and can make them. She understands like what makes them funny, but she just loves to tell the same ones over and over again. So you just gotta.
She's getting that delivery down.
She really is.
Yeah. One of my favorite child knock knock jokes I ever heard, I have to this date heard, is this kid came up to his dad and he said, I need you to help me with a knock knock joke. And he said, okay, knock knock. And he goes, who's there? The kid said, who's there? And the dad was like, I don't know. You told me to start. He's like, good one, Dad. And he walked away. That's to this date the best knock knock joke from a child I've ever heard.
That's so great. Beautiful. Very nice. Oh, Jean is asking about mostly white hydrangeas. So the hydrangeas that I'm actually familiar with are usually white or like slightly bluish or maybe slightly greenish. When you're painting white flowers, what I do is I try and mix a color that is a really, really light gray with undertones of another color. So especially hydrangeas is a great example. Even if those hydrangeas are white, if you look at them close enough, there usually is undertones of another color. Yellow and green are really common ones, or blue. And so just depending on your reference or what you're going off of, you would give that little hint of color to your really, really light gray mixture and then paint using those. If you're doing like a white rose, you would do that same idea, except leave the highlights of the rose, so wherever the sun is hitting it directly, you would leave the white of your paper, and you wouldn't actually paint those in. You would just paint the shadows around the highlights. So I probably should do a white flower or a white animal tutorial, but you just have to be really, really light-handed and let your light values do a lot of the work, and that's sometimes really hard to do. So just be gentle. Beautiful. Okay. Oh, we're all doing good. We're all about halfway done with our first flower ball. What did I call it? Bloom ball? Thank you.
Is it time to throw in a timer?
Give us 1 minute and then we'll throw in a timer.
Even though that's it.
Is that the same as a timer?
So-
Yes.
Just had 3 minutes or whatever. Or 6
Nicole,
minutes.
when we poke holes in each other.
This is why you're
And
not
our-
invited the rest of the month.
You were thinking it.
Sorry, excuse me. I gotta get my brush. Thank you. Oh, all right.
I have a 1 minute timer set before I can remind you about the 2 minute timer that I will be setting.
Okay, thank you.
Mind your head.
Oh, yeah. Ooh, I always hate it when my hair gets in there because you can see my roots right at the top of my head. I'm like, ooh.
The Roots are a great band.
What did they sing? Ooh, did I just put you on the spot?
They're Jimmy Fallon's band.
Oh, that's right.
The Roots.
That's right.
Oh wait, here, let's try this. Actually, I don't know how appropriate their music is now that I think about it.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't take that
I'll
chance.
research it first.
But the last time we did that for the Alexa, it was during the Hydrangea pre-recorded. We asked people to play Taylor Swift.
Okay, guys.
And we were getting comments that it worked. It was so great.
What song of hers?
We asked her to play Blank Space. I can't remember why. That's what. Yeah. I love the You Need to Calm Down song so much. Okay, are we ready to time it?
Okay.
Both of them are like, sure.
Plot twist, not up to the guests.
Keenan's like, I'm in control
I have
here.
the timer in my hand. All right, I'm going to start in 3,
Wait, how long are you doing it for?
2 minutes.
Okay, will you tell us when a minute is up?
Yes, I will.
And then count down from a minute to, don't do that. Start at 59.
Start over at
58.
57. I'll count down from 10.
Sounds stressful.
I'll warn you at a minute and 30 seconds, and then count down from 10 seconds.
Okay, that sounds
Okay,
perfect.
3, 2, 1. Timer started.
All right, paint fast, you guys. We can do this. It's just a piece of paper, also. What, Keenan? Don't distract me, I'm focusing. Did you ever see, Keenan, you probably didn't see this because this was before you joined our company, but when Al was doing the tutorials, the terrarium one, he was just like, I challenge you to paint this entire thing in 5 minutes. And I was like, bring it on. And he
Holy
timed me and I did the tutorial. I painted the picture in 5 minutes. It didn't look very detailed, but I always thought that would be fun if we did a little quick live where I just do that same tutorial and
A challenge week.
you just like say a number and I try and get that done.
Then we could make a quote, a Marvel movie quote. At least make it a challenge for me. Thor says that.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, he's my favorite.
I'm not familiar with
I
Marvel
know.
movies like you are. Oh, how much time do we have left?
53 seconds.
Oh, you missed your mark. Keenan, come on.
It's the first time.
No, it's not. We literally have footage of you doing this before.
Recorded and on the internet.
Yeah.
Okay. 30 seconds.
Okay, mine are starting to space out now because I'm like,
There's a rainstorm.
you can just like,
Knocking
whoa, 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 whoa. You just color the entire thing blue and purple. You're like, done.
Yeah.
What if you did it backwards? Painted everything blue and purple as a wash, and then did bleed-proof white.
Actually, somebody did do that. I think her, I think,
saw that.
yeah, I
It
think it
looks
was
really cool.
7,
Bonnie. Oh,
6,
okay, okay.
Oh,
no.
Oh,
4,
mm.
I'm not-
3, 2,
I'm very
1.
much not done.
Okay, I pretty much did mine. When you get to the edges, since the flowers petals are turning away from us as we get to the edges on those balls, you're not going to have full 4 petal flowers. They're going to be at an angle. So you would honestly probably see like 1 or 2 sticking out, like here or there. So just when you get to the edge, don't be afraid to like just do random petals because that's honestly what you would see. And I'm just going to go in and add in just some darker values on some of these areas. Give it little pops. It was Bonnie Parsons, I think, who did the like purpley blue wash and then just did white blooms on top of it, and it looked beautiful. I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's who.
Red.
Green.
But it was just red.
I turned it off. Okay, we have audio again, but mine's working. Is yours muted? Let's switch.
Mine is green.
Let's switch mics, because mine's working and yours is not.
Oh, really?
Nope, never mind. They're both working.
Are they working now?
Yeah, yours is working now.
Can you guys hear me?
change?
Nothing. I changed nothing.
It did go red again.
I turned mine off again. That was the only. I turned mine on.
So does that button go red when your mic is off?
Mic is on. Mic is off. Same with yours.
Okay. I think people are saying we're back.
Oh,
It's
we're
on.
back.
We're back, you
We're
guys.
back.
Sorry. We need to get a professional one of those handy, just to like put.
I don't know. I like that.
You like my little?
That is nice.
I'm glad that people could read.
1 hour later.
1 hour later. I tried to do the SpongeBob. It didn't work.
I love the feedback.
Okay. Thank you guys. Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
thank you everybody. Thank you so much
We
for all
don't
your
understand
feedback.
why technology does what it does, if I'm being
No,
honest.
one time our sling just shut off
Yeah, that's true.
for no reason.
We couldn't
so-
do a live that night. That's when it just didn't work at all.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Okay. But hopefully that gave you time to catch up because we're ready to move on to the next step. We are going to move on to step 3. We're going to do our second bloom ball. You're almost there.
I'm almost there.
You're doing
I can
good.
catch up.
You're doing good. You can catch up for sure. Okay. So, again, with this flower, I introduced pink more into the mixture to differentiate it. The other thing that I did is I did the values of the petals of where this line meets darker because I really wanted to differentiate that space. Is that how you would actually see it in person? Probably not. But I felt like that if I didn't darken the values on this back one, at least where that line is, they would just merge into one blob. And I really wanted it to be clear they're two different. So if you want to try doing it light first, and if it turned into a blob and you don't like that, then you can go back and make it darker. You have that right. Because you do run the risk of making it so dark that it's just this very clear dark line, and we don't want that. So it's kind of a little bit of, you need a little bit of both. We want to darken the value, but we don't want it so dark that all you see is this like super dark line right there. Does that make sense? Say yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Totally does. Yes, it makes sense.
Okay, so I'm going to grab a little bit of fuchsia. I got my violet, just start kind of mixing those in there. And some blue. Okay, and so right here at the edge, I'm just going to do darker value petals.
So our stream quality has drastically changed.
Oh no, is that fuzzy?
Yeah.
Gosh darn, if it's not one
So if it
thing,
looks
it's
fuzzy,
another.
it's because our sling is saying that we have marginal connectivity to our internet.
Okay, well hopefully that will improve.
Can they overlap a little bit, or they shouldn't really?
They can
Should I
overlap.
do my fourth one? or
Well,
just
I'm
do a
trying to
partial?
make this first one seem like it's in front. So if they overlapped, the left one would actually be
Right.
overlapping on the right. So I kind of avoided overlapping because because then that would kind of switch off on what's in front.
You could paint a professional sign and have Nicole write it.
Yeah,
One moment, please.
we can do so many things.
Yes.
Nicole, do you remember the time where we thought that we would have enough time to like design a calendar together?
One day.
Wouldn't that be amazing? We're like, we could totally design paper products and sell them.
That was in
6 months
January.
later, we're like, we're dying. So much to do.
Literally.
But in a good way. In a good way. I'm not complaining. But
Yeah, it's a great time.
one day we'll make the time to do it because I feel like we can make something really amazing.
I have a joke, but I'm not going to make it. I'll tell you later when we can. We don't know.
That might be for the best, Keenan.
I can edit myself. It's fine.
You just like beep out whatever.
It's like a seal bark rather than a beep. But that's the best I can do.
Also, another thing when Al used to film these is he had one of those like fog horns.
Are you serious?
Yeah, so when I would say something, he would just go. Like just if I announce something, like I'm like, this is the tutorial we're gonna do. He would take his foghorn and be like.
Did you jump every time?
I think one time it surprised me, and I was like, what the? But then after that, it was just a hilarious joke, and I thought it was the funniest thing. People probably thought we were a little bit obnoxious, but
What if each time he came out with a different instrument?
he's so great.
Amazing.
I feel like every person who's filmed these have just brought their own, perspective. Keenan has his facts, Al had his noises, Brock had his breathing. That people did not appreciate.
His breathing was just the
So
loudest.
he would be mic'd up, but he wouldn't turn off the mic when he wasn't talking, and he heavy sighs a lot. That's just how he breathes.
Yeah.
And so
But it would literally, I'll mute my mic, but it was.
it was like every 10 seconds you would just get this. Like it was so funny.
Hilarious.
And that is actually the noise that my mom makes when she's irritated. So I'm trained to think that whenever people like breathe heavy or sigh heavy, that they're super irritated. And so it's funny when you watch that tutorial because when you hear it, that's all I think. I'm like, man, I must have done something to make Brock so mad. And then I have to remember, like, no, people just breathe like that sometimes, and that's okay. They're not mad. Very nice. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Oh, good. You started on your second.
Yes, I did.
Very nice.
Caught up at last.
She
The
did.
sound went off.
We did that on purpose.
Yes.
Just for you.
Thank you.
Susan says we should have a watercolor music video with Sarah and Nicole and everyone at LMA. Keenan playing piano in the background.
Genius. Did she say Keenan playing piano in the background? How does she know that you play piano?
Because she's, her boys
Oh,
play
that's
piano.
right. You told me about that.
Yeah.
That's so great. We should do that. And actually, we had a karaoke night as a company, and it was
That sounds amazing.
a blast.
It got really intense.
We got really into it. Shanna Lynn says she does the same thing. She's like, it's a cleansing breath, and my husband thinks I'm annoyed with him, LOL. It is a cleansing breath. Takes me a while to recognize it. I have seen a few people request to see because I think the last live or during something I talked about how I got extra credit in math for doing an interpretive dance about my scientific calculator, and they're like, what could that be like? I'm like, should I bring it back? I don't know.
It makes me think of the tutorial where it was a fast forward of just you dancing the entire time.
No.
And there was no music.
So with my interpretive dance, as I was the scientific calculator, and so I pretended to be the calculator. And actually, if you want to hear a really funny story, part of it was I would do equations and dance around. And then I would go to people in the students, and I'd be like, press a button. And the first one I did it was in front of this boy who was 2 years younger than me. I would just stood in front of his desk, and I was like, press a button. And he was like, and then I'm like, oh, maybe that's really weird to ask somebody that you don't know.
That is amazing.
I'm
So-
taking tips, Kyla.
She just started high school, so.
Oh, yes.
I have a
That's
feeling that
helpful.
you won't need the extra credit in math like I did.
Maybe I get to homeschool math this year, though. I'm not taking it there. So the interpretive dance will have to wait. I don't
Or
know.
you could
I
do
don't
it with
have
your
for me,
family.
though. Oh, I could. My brothers would enjoy that. They might enjoy it too much, though. I think I'll avoid
Okay.
their teasing.
Okay, and I'm kind of finishing up my second bloom ball. I'm just going back in places that are wet and just putting little hints of paint to get that darker value and letting that kind of spread out. Now, another thing that I've noticed is sometimes as you're painting these flowers, you might get a lot of white marks in between. And one thing that you can do if your white marks get to a point where you feel like it doesn't feel full and it feels a little bit flat, sometimes what I'll go in and do is with the damp brush, I'll just spread some color around just over those white marks. Not over all of them, because you still want some of them there for highlights and depth, but you don't want them to overtake your subject to where it feels really empty. So I'll just go in and cover some of those up and fill a little bit of those in, just using the paint that's already there and spreading it around. And then that way it fills it in without like doing a super dark value, which could be distracting. It just feels like layers. Okay.
Cassie asks, what if I didn't leave white marks?
Well, if you didn't leave white spaces at all, it's really hard to go back and put those in. So what you can do, you just want to make sure that you have different values going on. So if you didn't leave any white spaces, but you clearly have a light value, a medium value, and a dark value, that is totally okay. If you really want white spaces and you didn't leave any in, if you have bleed proof white, which we sell at letsmakeart.com, super, super handy to have, you can go back in and put some white spaces in. It just depends on if it bothers you or not. If it doesn't bother you and you love how your hydrangea is turning out, then you don't need to have white spaces. That is totally okay, because those flowers are so bunched together that there's usually not spaces in between. But since this is more of a basic illustration instead of a realistic painting of the hydrangeas, I left white spaces in there for that more illustrative style. So it's just up to you. But you can't go back and put them in after you've painted everything because it's watercolor, but if you have bleed proof white, you can. White gouache might work similarly, or white acrylic, but I'm just a fan of bleed proof white in general, personally. Yes, Keenan, question?
Can we do a check-in?
Yeah, let's do a check-in. I'll start with Becca. Okay. So these look great. We have great values going on here. We have great colors, so I can tell the clear. And I think what's really successful is we have that darkened value right here. So it creates that shift, but it's not so dark that it's distracting. So you did that very nice. The only thing I would say is maybe down here a little bit, cover up some of these white spaces. And then I do want to see a little bit of the darker centers on some of them. So if yours is already, is it okay if I paint on this? If this is already dry and you want to go back and put in some dark centers, you can just re-wet the area and then grab some paint and just drop them in. So just by introducing a little bit of the darker value on some of those centers, it's just going to give our flowers a little bit more depth. But I think it looks great. Very nice. Okay. Oh, this is great. So we have Kyla's here. I love the color differentiation between the two. And I loved the blending that you did here. And the really great thing about blending when you go in and you soften some of it up is you have these light values. You have light, medium, and dark, and that's exactly what we want.
Thank you. I put my hands on it.
Well, that is a happy accident.
That is a happy
That's what we call them in showbiz, a happy accident, and it worked out beautifully. But I really like it, and it filled up those spaces, but it feels full but not flat. So I think that's really nice. The only thing is maybe darken this edge a little bit, just a little bit, not a lot, because we don't want a super strong pronounced line, especially because these are both pretty light value generally. But maybe just do an extra layer right here just to really space those out. But I think that looks beautiful.
Awesome.
Good job.
Thank you. Good job.
Okay.
Gorgeous.
Gorgeous, gorgeous. Now we're going to move on to our very last step, which is our stem and our leaves. So I'm going to put my stem in first. So I'm going to mix my green. I'm going to grab the emerald and the blue and a little bit of the fuchsia. So now I have this really, really gorgeous deep green. I'm going to use my round 6 for the stem simply because the bottom of the stem is thicker. And this is the thing about stems. It's the same with trees, is usually near the base, they're thicker, and as they go up and out, they thin. So I'm going to do a thicker stem down here.
Can you push your paper up just a little?
Yep. Thicker stem. Is that up enough?
Yep.
And then I'm going to move to, and then as I'm like doing my stem line to my hydrangea, it's going to thin out. So you can still get pretty thin lines with your round 6. It's the same ideas, vertical hold, using that tip, really light pressure. Very nice. Very nice.
It's a bit too straight.
That is totally okay. This one got a little bit wonky over here, but that's fine. I'm going to put a leaf right there, cover it. No big deal. Okay, now I'm going to move on to my leaves. And what you can do for this is if you want to use emerald green for the base of your leaf. So if I just use emerald green for this part, and then let that dry a second and go back in to do the veins. So what I did with these is I painted a base and then I went back on with the darker green to paint in between the veins on the leaf. So essentially I'm going to be grabbing this dark green. I'm going to try and blow it to dry a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. And then I'm going to, you just have to view it almost like chunks. So if my middle vein is coming up here, I'm going to avoid that. And then the veins come out from the side. I'm going to be painting the area in between the veins. Now, depending on how wet your leaf is, will determine how sharp these marks are. This leaf was pretty wet when I did the second layer on top, which is why these are blending almost all the way together. If you want them to be more defined, wait for your first layer to dry before you put in these, I don't know, what should I call them, like sections? Because I don't want to call them putting in the veins because we're painting around the veins.
Sections sounds good.
Okay.
Partitions.
Yeah, just like that.
I have a joke I was going to read before we lost audio.
Okay.
How do you catch a rare rabbit?
Oh no, I know this one.
How?
You sneak up on it.
You what?
What?
Unique.
Unique?
Instead of you sneak, it's unique. It's a rare, unique.
Oh,
Unique up on it.
oh! I forgot the rare part in the joke, and that's why
Yes,
the
me too.
unique
I was
wasn't connected. Me and Nicole are on the same level. Both of us are like, what?
What?
Oh, that's great.
I had to read it because I was told that the guests would know it.
Yes.
Did you
Wait a
see us roll
second.
our eyes? I
Yes.
see someone.
They
from
both
my-
looked up almost at the same
know.
Who was the
time.
comment from?
Well,
Does it show
Samuel
you?
Cross.
I bet it was.
yeah, it was.
Oh my goodness, that's my father.
That's hilarious.
And the jokes you hear 5 million times.
I love it.
That's so great.
That would be one.
Last joke, from
'Kay.
Wanda at least.
Okay.
What's a taco's favorite dance?
What's a taco's favorite dance? A
Maybe.
salsa?
I'm not gonna say it because
Salsa.
Were you gonna say that, Kat?
no.
What were you gonna say?
I was gonna
The
say something that doesn't make sense.
What is it?
Sarah.
Huh?
No, you're right.
Was it salsa? Yes! I love it when you guess jokes. That was so satisfying. I I love it when that happens. Okay. Another little thing that you can do. Let's say you put in your sections and they all blend together and you're like, gosh, darn it, I wanted some space here. Another thing that you can do is after it's dried a little bit, you can take your round 2 and just water, and you can try and put the actual veins in with water. So you're essentially lifting the color out on some of these parts. So with watercolor, you can usually lift just with a damp brush. And try and put some light back into them. So that is another option if you lose your veins and it makes you sad. You can fix it. Now this leaf right here, the reason why it's straight on the bottom is because we're looking at it from the side. So remember that leaves, you have to remember that whenever you're painting just about anything, it's a 3-dimensional object, which means not all of the things are going to be totally flat and looking at you. They're turned, they turn away from you. So you kind of have to envision like, we have leaves that are coming off on all different sides of this 3-dimensional stem. So some of them we would see the back of, some of them we would just see the side of, things like that. So don't be afraid to just like play with it and see what happens. That's why it's also really good to like go out and just look at things. I love the green that you got. That's such a gorgeous green. It's like an olive green.
It's from my party at the bottom of the chair.
If you don't want to put veins in, if you want to keep them just like this, which is also really cool, I did both. So I'll do my emerald green thing and then I'll drop in this nice deep color at like the bottom or the top. And then put some water drops in there and you can get some great textures. So like the coolest, funkiest bleeds and blooms.
I think, are mine just too wet? I keep losing like all my veins.
Yeah, it
They
might
just
just
way
be
too wet.
it might just be a little bit
Okay.
wet. So I would wait.
Here, they just all went. See the
Yeah.
water line? That's where they
Mhm.
were.
But you can do another layer on
Okay.
top of that.
All right, I'll come back to it.
That one's probably
Same
too
thing
wet.
Here. It's still, see, I added them and now they're.
Yeah, just give it a little bit longer.
Alright.
Mine pretty much bled out too. I went back in and put in some of those lines.
Okay.
And this one I didn't even try, but look how
Yeah.
funky cool
Right,
that is.
yeah.
So
Okay.
if the veins just aren't working for you and you just want to go with this watercolor texture, go for it because this is really why I love watercolor. And leaves are one of my favorite things to do this with. That wet on wet technique where you just wet the area, you drop in strong color, and you just let it move and do its own thing. It's gorgeous. Now, another thing that you can do if you really want your veins to be pronounced is you can leave them white. So I could like leave the center of my leaf white, and you just have to like paint around where these white vein lines would be, which is a little bit difficult because you almost have to think backwards. It's like a sculpting. You know what I mean? Like drawing your building or painting your building, but like when you're sculpting, you start with a block and then you take it out. Does that make sense? So your mind has to think backwards.
See it.
Yeah. I can't do that
No.
very well, but that's okay. So here is me avoiding white areas of where the veins could possibly be. And then dropping in some color for some texture. Oh, Shayla said she said, I cheated, I'm using masking fluid to keep my veins. Not cheating, that is a wonderful tool. If you guys don't know what masking fluid is, it's this wonderful, it's essentially like liquid glue. So you don't use your nice paintbrushes to do it because it will ruin your brushes. But you essentially put it on whatever paper you want, whatever part of your paper you want to keep white, you let it dry, and then you paint on top of it. And then when that painting is dry, you rub off the masking fluid and whatever is underneath it is white. It's magical.
I'm going to need you to show me how to use that.
It's really great. I used it, I think I used it in the Monarch tutorial actually for some of the dots, but
It was before my time.
it was. I'll have to do it in another bonus project or something. Very nice. Beautiful. Are we ready to hang them up
Yes.
to show everybody? We got the camera?
Got camera.
Okay.
It might look a little ridiculous with this camera for some reason.
I'm not, what do you mean?
Like almost pixelated. Really sorry. Really sorry in advance. Okay. Also, I apologize if I mispronounce your name.
Kyla.
Kyla. See, I didn't do it. It's just in advance.
She's doing that artistic thing.
Okay.
Where you, like hold your hand under the.
Here we go.
Well,
On
We're
the
starting
camera.
with beautiful. There it is.
Gorgeous.
Look at those hydrangeas and those leaves.
Great colors.
Wonderful green. Thank you, Kyla. Here,
She's like, thank
here we
you.
go, Sarah.
Wait.
Oh. Beautiful. There it is.
Good.
Oh, nice hydrangeas. Nice veins. And back up.
Woo! Yeah.
Look at those hydrangeas.
Gorgeous.
Those values. Those
Great
textures.
colors. I love the green
Lovely.
you got.
love
That
the
green
olive.
is so good.
Yeah.
I do too. Nice.
That green is so good. Okay. First of all, you guys are so great. Thank you so much for painting with me. And thank you guys for coming. I had a blast driving all this way. It was really wonderful. Of course. And if you painted, share it. I know that's the scariest thing. Putting your art for the world to see is very vulnerable. We recognize this. But also, it gives people the confidence to try it themselves. We're trying to knock off that idea that things are done perfectly every single time, because it is not true. It's not true. So if you can just start posting your work, share your journey, document your journey, and people want to see it, and it gives them the courage to do it too. When people see other people being vulnerable, they're like, hey, maybe I can do this. And then we'll just have a big painting party all the time. It would be so great. So if you're on Instagram, you can tag us, Let's Go Make Art, or hashtag Let's Make Art. We have a wonderful Facebook community that is separate from our business page called Let's Make Art Watercolor. It's huge now, actually. It's a very big group, but it's very supportive and very encouraging, and you can see what other people are doing. And that's really important. That's the best part of this show, actually. I love seeing people's projects at the end, because we're all painting the same thing, but they all turn out different because we all have different things to bring to the table. So share it, post it, paint it, Be brave. You guys can do this. You're really amazing. Thursday night, we have Nicole's Lettering Live, 7:15 Central Standard Time here. We'll be lettering. It's going to be great. Today's the last day to get that summer box. If you're interested, it's on sale. And then the fall lettering box will be released
Keep going.
tomorrow. Yes, Keenan.
Can you mention, unless you want me to paint the background of their wood piece?
Yeah, will you hand me the wood piece? So this is what you're doing on Thursday?
Prior to the...
So Thursday, this is what you guys are painting with Nicole. If you can paint the back part with the white, bleed-proof white.
Or whatever color they want.
Or whatever color you're using first and have that dried and ready, that would be wonderful.
That
Okay?
will save everyone's night.
Yes.
Keenan and I had to wait
I think it was 2
How
hours.
long?
2 hours.
2 hours?
Yeah.
Please paint it.
At least 2 hours before
At
the
least 2
event.
hours before the tutorial. So again, thank you guys for coming. Thank you guys for painting with me. You're really amazing. And that's all I got to say. Bye.